Clyde, how deep into your belly button can you stick a Q-tip?
Probably not as deep as Chrissy. It was Chrissy, right?
It was Chrissy, my draft pick. My first draft pick, I think. I think I took Chrissy first round.
Oh, for that reason alone?
Yeah, I could tell from her bio that she had a deep secret and a true hidden skill, and that skill is that she can stick a whole Q-tip into her belly button. Welcome back to Survivor Analytics, the show where we talk about how to win Survivor and how not to win Survivor using analytics. I'm the voice of the people. My name is Jack. With me, as always, the true expert and the face of Survivor Analytics on TikTok, on YouTube, on, the Instagram. It's Clyde. Say hi, Clyde.
What's up, party people? Wow, honored to be the face. Does that make you the face of the Threads and Blue Sky? How are those coming along?
I'm the brains.
Any updates with those accounts? I haven't checked them.
We actually have a pretty good community on Blue Sky that grew very quickly, but I don't watch the show live. I watch the show on Thursdays, and so it's very hard to keep up with a show where live posting is the form. It doesn't really work.
That makes sense. Well, you mentioned at the beginning that the podcast name is Survivor Analytics, and I feel like we've been lacking a bit in the analytics department. I need to roll up here with a bit more stats in the future, but I came through this week, and I have some stats for you. So this is all related to the Vula tribe. I'm sure we'll be talking about them a lot this week, but I think that Vula might be headed in the direction of becoming one of the worst tribes of the new era.
And so let's just say really quick, Vula is the green tribe. It's week 2. Let's not expect people to know that. I definitely know it. But let's just for other people say, it's the green tribe.
For the other voices of the people, it's the green tribe.
So you're saying worst of the new era.
So could you guess what is the worst tribe of the new era? Are there any that stick out in your mind of the ones that we've covered? Because the worst one is one that we talked about on this podcast.
I have a tribe name in mind, and I'm not sure if it's from the new era or Samoa. So I'm going to take a swing.
Yeah, take a swing, Jack. What do we have to lose?
I'm thinking Foa. I'm pretty sure that's Samoa the more I think.
That is Samoa.
Tika.
Tika was in consideration. I think Tika is a bad tribe pre-merge, but they really turn it around in the post-merge because you get Carolyn, Jam, Carson all reaching the finale. The answer I was looking for was Lulu from Survivor 45, also known as the Lulu Losers. This is the gold standard of disastrous new era tribes, and this is what Vula is aspiring to be right now. So I have some statistics for you.
Yeah, let's put a number on this.
Lulu competes in 3 immunity challenges. They go 0 for 3. They compete in 2 reward challenges. They go 1 for 2. That tribe includes 2 quitters in Hannah Rose and Sean, and the first 4 boots of the season all come from the Lulu tribe. Their highest placing member is Emily, who got 7th. And given Vula's tribe performance this year and their decision to vote out Kevin this week, spoiler, but you know what you're signing up for when you turn on this podcast, I'm really worried about Vula's future, and I think they could be headed down a Lulu route. But what do you think?
So remind me, with Lulu, 3 immunities. What happened after those 3? Was there a tribe swap?
So that's the only new era season to have a tribe swap. And at that point, I think Sean, Caleb, and Emily all make it to the swap. Sean's tribe goes to tribal council, and then he gives up.
If they lose next week, right, they're matching that record for what counts, right, in terms of losses. And they're at 3 of 4 straight eliminations, right? So if the next 2 weeks they send someone home, which barring a swap, right, seems reasonable, why wouldn't the other 2 tribes run away with every single challenge when the other tribes have fire, the other tribes have fishing kits, the other tribes have 6 members, right? The other tribes are so resource rich that they can sit a former professional basketball player for a basketball challenge, right? In Star. And so we'll see, right? But it is hard to see Cedric, and Mary despise each other. And Pizza Guy, who in my notes is just Pizza, because I'm not sure what his name is yet.
It's Justin.
It's Pizza. He's Pizza to me.
Okay.
That's not a winning tribe. There's no harmony here. We'll get into the vote here, later. This is one of the most questionable decisions I've ever seen in such an early move from Cedric here.
Would you say that the struggles of Vula should be attributed more to the decisions of that tribe or more to production for just putting this group together in the first place? Because I feel like we looked at Vula on paper preseason and said, this is the weakest tribe.
I mean, it's definitely both, right? The strategic decision to vote out Kevin is on them. Kevin was the Yule head, right? RIP. He was our winner last week. He was a good player. He had a good head on his shoulders. He was in a great direction. And I think the tribe composition is to blame for all of the overarching issues, for sure. When the other two tribes are so physically strong, so capable, it makes me wonder if we find out here in a few months that they decided on the tribe compositions and some of these people on Vula were alternates, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
Backups, right? Who got the call. Not to say that an alternate doesn't deserve the call, because they absolutely do. But if production had done the math and said, well, we've got this many fit people here, this many buff people here, this many buff people here, are meat boys adequately distributed for the start of the game? And then a meat boy dropped out and they had to fill with pizza guy or whatever, or Cedric. It's a bad cocktail of stuff.
That's fair. We can hop right in then. Is there a tribe that you want to start with between these three?
I have the most stuff with Logi. Siva is just the disgusting freak show. I don't even want to talk about the freak show.
Okay, let's just do Siva first, because I feel like they get the least amount of content. We can get them out of the way.
And the worst.
You mentioned it at the beginning. We get an entire segment dedicated to the bodily abnormalities of Siva. Chrissy talks about her belly button. The big thing to note here, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I didn't want to talk about this on the podcast, but we're forced to with the way that this show is edited. Charity gets the feet segment of the season. And normally I wouldn't bring this up because who cares? But we need to remember that the last person to get the feet segment on Survivor was D on 45, and that ended up coming into play. She had some content about how like her toes were all weird, and then that later benefited her in the challenge, and she went on to win the whole thing. So maybe this is the start of Charity's winning trajectory.
Welcome to Survivor Analytics, where the analysis can range from statistical comparison to other seasons to feet content. It's a horrible segment. If Charity wins this game because of these feet, then you win some crown, Clyde.
Okay.
For this is a called shot right here. Something to keep an eye on. There's a whole thing with, is it Kyle? Where he talks about how he's had a callus for years. And everyone's like, that's a wart, dude. David has 4 nipples, and he had the other 2 removed, so they're just gross wounds. They're not gross. They're just like birthmarks. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that you don't really want to see. Here's my takeaway, because I don't want to talk about them anymore. This is the difference between the good tribes and Vula. At the good tribes, they're so screwing around that they are comparing bodily abnormalities. They're carving Wi-Fi passwords into trees. They're doing all of this bonding that Vula is absolutely not doing. They're not getting the space to do it. They're not trying to do it. And that stark difference means I think any Vula members who make the merge are absolutely going to be jumping ship and at the bottom of alliances with other tribe members. Other tribes members.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening. And on the topic of Siva, this content reminds me a lot of Siga in Survivor 46, that green tribe where you had Yanu going to tribal council over and over and over again on that season. But you need to show the other tribes in some way. So I think on that season, we saw Siga where Charlie and Ben had a competition where Charlie was naming Taylor Swift songs and Ben was naming Metallica songs, I think. So it was unnecessary for the storyline of the episode, but you need to put it in there. That way this entire tribe isn't invisible for half the season. This felt like an excuse to just show us the Siva tribe. Another big progression over there is Mitch and Charity, who are clearly positioned on the bottom.
Yeah.
It seems pretty clear at this point that whenever Siva goes to tribal council, one of those two will be going home. And I wanted to get your thoughts on who is in more danger between those two.
Mitch.
Okay, I think I disagree with you. I lean more towards Charity right now, but you tell me why you think Mitch is in trouble.
It's a weird race to the bottom where the other members of their tribe have clearly agreed those two are on the bottom. I don't know why. Charity can't be trusted. I don't know why. For some reason, we're getting the toe content, but I don't know what she did to lose trust in her tribe mates. The reason I say Mitch is because of the idol, right? Or the advantage, which we can come back to later. But I do think that puts a slightly bigger target on him. Well, tell me what you think and tell me why you think they're on the bottom, because I do not get it.
So I think they're on the bottom because of Charity. In episode 1, Charity wants to target Kyle because she has this theory that Kyle got an advantage on the Sweat versus Savvy challenge, which has never happened in Survivor history. But since that moment, Charity has been on the bottom. And I think Mitch has fallen to the bottom of the tribe through his association with Charity, where I think we get a confessional from David this week where he says, I like Mitch, but he's aligned with Charity and I can't trust Charity. So even though the advantage might paint a target on his back, I think when that group decides to finally knock someone out, they'll go to the person that they trust the least, because once Charity's out, they could pull Mitch into their different schemes. And I'm biased because Mitch is on my fantasy team. I've already lost one of my members. I can't afford to lose 2 in the pre-merge. I've accepted that I'm not winning the fantasy league. I just don't want to get last.
I'm in last right now.
Which is crazy considering you have 3 people.
It doesn't really make sense, but well, I think this is driven by the journey. Everybody who hates Mitch and Charity decides they're going to go find an idol or find something to battle, right? Because they know that Mitch has something. They're going to find something to counteract it. Kyle finds the Beware advantage, tells David, and then his quiet alliance with Camilla comes up. And this is great because Camilla is my draft pick. So I was stoked about this. And Kyle says, I don't play Wordle, because he has another one of these Cryptex things. Passes it off to Camilla. And Camilla just goes, yep, I figured it out. It took me 4 minutes. Lists out all the words that she tried. Went through this whole permutation. It could have been listen. It could have been silent. It could have been inlets. And it turned out to be enlist, which is kind of a weird word for this context. But basically, Kyle outsources the entire solving of his Beware advantage to somebody else. So he now has an immunity idol.
Yeah, I was going to say, despite Camilla doing all of the work, Kyle is the one that gets to walk away with the advantage. This is your typical, group member, doesn't show up to any of the meetings, puts their name on the project at the very end and gets 100%. But you know what? It worked out for Kyle. And I think this solidified the alliance between those two. I don't think the winner of the season is coming from the Siva tribe, but if it does, I'd have the most confidence in that pair. Outside those two, I don't see many other people really being set up for that winner's arc. That's really everything on Siva. You want to head over to Loggy?
Yeah, let's go to Loggy. Basically, we have a dynamic that seems very one-sided here, or a animosity that seems very one-sided, which is Eva versus Star. And basically the root of this is they are talking strategy, right? The great thing is that a lot of their members are focused on winning team challenges, right? They want to be a Meat Boy tribe and make it to the merge and then see what happens, right? Which I love. That's great. I can see that, especially coming from Eva, coming from Joe, all of them really, except for Star. They're basically talking strategy and saying, okay, you can do this part of the challenge, you can do this part of the challenge, and who's going to sit? And Eva says, Star, do you mind sitting? Something along those lines. And Star says, okay. And then immediately walks off, goes into the confessional booth and says, are you kidding me? I wanted to do the chat. Like, it's on her. She completely says, I'm being slighted and not given a chance, when she says, yeah, no worries. It's back to back that she goes from, I'm fine with this, to I'm not fine with this.
After that conversation, she's dead set on voting out Eva. Maybe they had feuds prior to that moment, but the edit makes it look like that was the tipping point for Star. And she gets to work. She runs into the jungle and starts looking for an idol. We get a confessional from Star where she says that, I've been hesitant to talk strategy because we've been working so well together. So now I feel like I need to get the idol to compensate for that.
She was idol hunting last week, though.
Is interesting because I think the way that the rest of Loggy interpreted Star's aggressive playstyle is the way that most other tribes would handle it, where she goes idol hunting, she's immediately on the bottom. The one exception to that is the Vula tribe, where Sei is praised and elevated for that same kind of play style. But Star goes, she finds the Beware advantage. The issue is that, like the other contestants who found this thing, she can't figure it out. And the big difference between Star and those other players is that she doesn't really have an ally to help her. She goes about this in a pretty weird way. She shares the clue with essentially the entire tribe other than Eva.
It's a wild order of operations. She pulls in Joe. Joe immediately goes and pulls in Shaheen because he wants someone else from his alliance to know that he's loyal. And it's a cool act of loyalty to his alliance, I think, and a cool reinforcement of a different relationship, right? I really like this move. Star fully hands over the puzzle and the guide, all the components to Shaheen. And now he is like, I can do whatever I want. He says, I could stall, I could help her, whatever, right? I guess out of impatience, Star goes and tells Thomas and Bianca. Everybody but Eva now knows. Thomas and Shaheen start talking about it, and Thomas says, hey, let's just lose the guide.
Yeah.
Some devious thinking from Thomas, and I'm here for it. And it raises Thomas's threat level immediately for Shaheen, which is a good read on his part. I kind of wish he had gone for it and lost it.
Yeah, because if Shaheen went through with that, it would be the optimal outcome for Thomas, where, Star stays on the bottom. She has no way of getting her vote back or finding the idol, and Thomas's hands are clean. Shaheen is the one that gets all the blame for losing the map in the first place. You mentioned this, but we get that confessional of Shaheen acknowledging Thomas as this threat. And I'm going back and forth on how I interpret this. Like, it could really go one of two ways. This could be going the Kenzie direction, where on 46, we get a confessional from Banu very early in the season where he says, Kenzie is the mermaid dragon. She's this major threat in the game. We need to take her out. She ends up winning the whole thing based on her social game. So that could be the direction for Thomas long-term, or this could be foreshadowing Thomas becoming the villain of the season. I actually watched the next time on this episode, and it ends with a diabolical laugh from Thomas. So we could be setting him up as this villain to be taken down. But what do you see for Thomas long-term? Do you think he's more winner potential or just more villain potential?
I think he's just in a great spot. I don't want to go so far as to say villain. I think he's just going to play a hard game, and I think he's willing to make a bold move. I mean, that's a bold suggestion, right?
Yeah.
In this circumstance, and if he's willing to throw that off the cuff, I think he'll go far, right? And I think it'll be fun to watch. I'm very excited about Thomas's game. The final thing here at Loggy is we get this wild scene of Joe struggling, right? Joe has a strife within him, and he's on the beach, and he seems to just be destroying coconuts with his bare hands as he essentially narrates to the camera and talks out loud to himself what his situation is, right? Oh my God. Star wants to work with me, but she wants to go after Eva, and Eva's my number one, and Eva's told me she's my number one. What do I do? What do I do? Yeah, right? He's tearing these things apart, and then he just goes and tells Eva, and it's all good because it's a stronger alliance, and everyone knows Star's on the bottom anyway. Everyone's trying to figure out what to do with her, not how to work with her. Nobody talks about this advantage in a way that suggests they want to work with her. That's the sense I get.
Yeah, because now we're essentially playing a game of charades. We're trying to make it appear like we're trustworthy in helping Star without actually going through the motions of helping her acquire that advantage. I really enjoyed that segment with Joe. I feel like this is the second week in a row where the edit is hammering this point that Joe struggles balancing his strategic decisions and his emotional decisions. We got it last week where in confessional he said that he would never flip on Eva and he would be willing to throw his game away for her. So I'm sticking with my theory that at some point this season, Joe will flop for Eva to advance in the game.
I could see it.
That's everything on
Moving
Logi.
on.
Do you want to talk Journey and then just do all of the Vula tribe stuff?
Yeah, I mean, and before the Journey, there's a bunch of flies at Vula, and they're going after Sei. That's it.
There's no animal shot. The flies don't count.
The flies are hovering around the garbage, which is this tribe. That's the animal shot. I mean, it's not particularly subtle.
Okay.
Okay. Boats show up. Here is the most interesting thing we've had around a journey that I can remember. There are instructions for how to decide who goes on the journey. Everyone is going to stick out a number of fingers. Lowest unique number goes on the journey. Very interesting. No more who wants to go, I don't want to go, do you want to go? How did you feel about this? Did you like this?
I liked it. It gives the players a degree of agency where if you don't want to go on the journey, you can just throw down a 5 every single time and avoid it in its entirety.
Yeah.
So I think it was an interesting way of making it random while still giving the players power. According to my sources, this number mechanic is a part of the Survivor card game that you purchased. So I thought you would have seen this before. Something tells me that game is still mint in box.
It's not mint in box. I've opened the box. The plastic has been torn off.
Oh, okay.
I haven't shuffled the cards yet. It's very complicated, and in hindsight, I should have played it when friend of the show Carrie and friend of the show Alexis were in town recently. But
apparently this same mechanic is involved in that game somehow. I don't know how they incorporate it, but you'll find out one day, whenever that game makes it off the shelf.
That game is complicated.
Really?
Like, I was expecting it to be like Exploding Kittens, where it's just play cards and, get rid of your hand. No, it's like Survivor in a card game, which sounds really fun, but every time I've tried to open it up was not in a setting where people were prepared for that, which is fine. I need to plan an evening around it. It's that kind of card game. So, anyway, the people we have going: Mitch from Siva, Thomas from Loggy, and Mary goes from Vula, and Say is pissed. Vula did a practice round that Say won, and then they did another round and Mary won, so she gets to go. Say is furious, and Mary runs off to get her shoes, and Say tears into the guys. How could you let this happen? Just let me go. Now we're giving her a chance to survive. Just not good social play.
Yeah, poor social play from Say. She's definitely being set up as the season's villain. A lot of Rome energy with Say, someone that gets a ton of screen time in the pre-merge, very aggressive with her gameplay, but not someone that I think has built many trusting relationships. I think she's tight with Cedric, but I think there will be a point in the season where Cedric has to question that alliance. Multiple points in the episode where Say is shown in a bad light. We see it later on in the challenge as well, where she's screaming at the other guys and she apologizes to Mary.
And that Say Cedric vibe, not established by them on screen. I don't feel like I've seen a conversation between them that established the level of loyalty Cedric has for her.
It seems like a lot of the other pairs on the season are emphasized much more than that too. Like Eva and Joe get way more screen time.
It's the whole theme so far this season, which is there are two tribes of friends and a tribe of people trying to survive, right? But so we go on the journey. All 3 members not competing against each other. They just carpooled. Each one of them goes, does a puzzle. If you do it in the time, you get an advantage. If you lose your vote, and you have no choice in the matter because you agreed to go to Party Rock Island. The puzzle is like a numbered block thing where you can only move blocks out from the left-hand side. Like you slide them out. Long story short, Mitch succeeds, Thomas barely succeeds, and Mary fails. Mitch gets a block a vote, and it's a secret block. I don't feel like we've seen a block a vote in quite some time, but you'll have to tell me.
The last time we had a block a vote was last season, actually.
Oh,
Rachel plays a block a vote at the final 6, I want to say. She runs the block a vote on Sam and then plays her idol to prevent the majority from splitting the vote on her and Sue. So there you go. We did see a vote block.
There it is.
But that was a public vote block.
Yeah, this is hidden. Mitch gets to block a vote, and the person will go to vote, find out their vote was blocked in the booth, and will not know who did it. Thomas gets to steal a vote, and we come back.
Well, can I just say that the distribution of the advantages here is pretty unfair? I think a steal a vote is way more powerful than a block a vote, because the steal a vote is essentially a block a vote plus an extra vote. So I don't understand why Thomas gets that, but Mitch doesn't. I understand that they need to put different advantages in the game, but I feel like they should be around the same level of power. And I don't know if that really applies here.
What do you think was Mary's?
Mary's? What would Mary's be? Probably an extra vote, right? Which is easily the worst one out of those three. So maybe Mary didn't miss out on that much. But you mentioned earlier that the contestants here don't have a say in whether or not they risk their vote. I'm okay with it this time because journeys are just a part of the new era, and the players had that opportunity to volunteer for the journey. So they knew they were risking their vote when they put down that lower number. If they didn't want to run that risk, they could have thrown down a 5 and avoided it in its entirety.
What if, counterpoint, whole tribe doesn't want to go? You're all throwing down 5s.
I guess then it would just become like a rock draw or something like that.
Yeah. And then, somebody has to do it, but it's bad luck. So now we get my favorite part of the journey, which is the return. How do you sell what you've just done to your tribe mates who are immediately suspicious of you? And we get a couple of different iterations here. Mary comes back, tells everyone she lost her vote, and is a little snippy about it, which isn't very kind. And she basically says, at least you're in okay spirits about it. Thomas says he had the option to walk away, and then he walked away. I always like that option as a lie because it feels believable. You'd like to think that Survivor would be a game where you could walk away from something you don't want to do in a situation like this.
Well, the issue is that he wasn't actually given the option to walk away. So when Thomas reaches the merge, if Mitch and Mary are still around, they could debunk that story, and then the other players would know that Thomas got something.
That's true. But we'll just have to keep an eye out for that. And Mitch tells his whole tribe.
They're all celebrating together and chanting. Charity is in tears because she's so proud of Mitch. I don't really know what he was thinking here.
And then immediately, as soon as Mitch and Charity go off to have their little private moment, and Charity's saying, I'm so proud of you. This is such a big moment for you. This is Survivor history, right? You did this. The other 4 members of their tribe are in the jungle figuring out how to kill him, right? They're all out there scrambling for the idol that Kyle ends up with. Telling everyone shows a lack of social awareness on Mitch's part. He does not know how his tribe feels about him, right?
It's just absolutely brutal because after that journey, I was thinking, I'm in a great spot. I have Mitch on my fantasy team. I have Thomas on my fantasy team. They're both getting advantages. I'm set.
Oh, that's how I'm in last.
Because my guy's got the hardware. But
yeah.
It's difficult because Thomas takes the hyper villain approach in, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm going to come up with this intricate lie to avoid the target, which will probably bite him in the butt. And then Mitch takes the hyper hero approach of, I'm going to be loyal and honest, and that will bite him in the butt. You need to find the middle ground between those two. And somehow Mary, the player that's on the bottom of her tribe, the one that was honest with losing her vote, is probably in the best spot after this journey. When she first told them that she lost her vote, I thought she was a goner. But I think by telling them that information, it allows her to fade into the background and enable those Woola contestants to just cannibalize each other.
Yeah. Challenge?
Yeah, let's go the challenge. This was a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a little different. We've got an immunity challenge and reward playing for fishing kits. First off, Jeff asks Mitch a question. Mitch takes a moment because of his speech impediment. He has some sort of stutter or something, right? And there's a very nice exchange where Jeff basically says, Mitch, just in your own time, how do you want us to work with you in these moments, right? Do you want help? What do you need? And Mitch just says, give me a chance, give me some time, it'll pass, and I'll be able to talk, right? Really sweet, really nice. Between Mitch and Eva, I really like this season's showcasing of people with just different abilities and life experiences competing, right? Mitch's problems on this show are completely unrelated to his speech impediment, and going right from one into the other is pretty brutal, but that's how the edit shook out here. But it was a really nice moment. The challenge itself, they jump off a tower because you have to, when it's on the water. We get a underwater rope crawl where they basically have to dive under a platform, pull themselves along, release some buoys. Somebody else has to balance the buoys across in pairs. and then at the end, shoot the buoys into baskets. So, of course, Loggy sits Star, the former basketball player, because I guess they'd already agreed on it, and Star didn't say anything. This would be the moment from Star's point of view. This is the time to say, guys, I can hoop. Like, let me take these shots. The underwater part was pretty cool. Joe and Eva do really well. They do the balance part together, and they are a great team. Thomas gets hit in the face with the balance pole, which is pretty funny. Jeff, quote, Loggy in a familiar spot, the lead. And as Eva and Mitch are shooting, pretty lights out. Eva hits 3 in a row. Mitch hits 5 shots in a row, all 5 needed for Siva to win immunity. Cedric and Kevin are at the back, trying to do the balance section, balancing a buoy between them on a pole, or like holding the buoy between 2 poles, right? They keep dropping over and over and over. Say is screaming at them. And yeah, essentially they totally choke. It's kind of on Cedric, I'll say that.
You don't think this is an even blame between Cedric and Kevin? Because the narrative when they go back to camp is that this is Cedric's fault. And I don't know if I really buy that.
Well, if you watch the tape, Cedric falls in a lot. Cedric is falling on the balance section far more than Kevin is, right? Is that just his fault? Not necessarily, right? I mean, you're trying to balance with somebody else. Somebody else could throw you off. I'm not going to do much Cedric apologizing here. Vula loses. Jeff, quote, absolutely abysmal failure for Vula, which in week 2 is a pretty brutal quote.
I think we get some harsher Jeff this week. We see it a bit in the challenge, but it comes forward much more during the tribal council, where he's really leaning in to this Vula tribe that he created. Jeff is the one that created this problem in the first place.
Well, so maybe what that is Jeff is being hard on them. It's tough love, right? He is determined. He created this Frankenstein's monster. He is the Frankenstein. This is his monster. He wants it to be successful, to thrive. And he's trying to push them to be greater. Yeah, he is pretty tough on them.
Vula's going back to tribal council. I don't have much else from the challenge because we've seen this water-based challenge how many times before, right?
So let's talk about the couple schools of thought here at Vula. There's the straight-up plan. Mary's going home. That's one. Then there's the second layer, which is after Cedric says, hey, I screwed this up, guys. I want to have conversations, but I'm aware you might be going after me, and I understand. Kevin declares this tribal will be where Kevin comes to play, which whenever someone refers to themselves in the third person, Jack doesn't like it. Kevin's plan is for him, Cedric, and Pizza to flip on Say and let Say think that it's still Mary and not play her idol. Talk to me about Cedric here.
I kind of get where Cedric is coming from here. Even though I'm not the biggest Say supporter, I feel like I understand how other people felt about Rome last season, because I was so pro Rome just because he was on my fantasy team. Now that the bold villain of the pre-merge is not on my team, I kind of get it. So like on a personal level, I'm not really rooting for Say, but I understand why Cedric would want to fall back to her. If you vote out Say here, your 4 going into the next round are the 3 guys and Mary. We know that Kevin is close to Mary. So you could be in a difficult situation where Cedric doesn't have a super tight ally. He would essentially be depending on the guys sticking together to knock out Mary next. So I don't have a major issue with him leaking this information back to Say. My big problem is the conclusion that they come to after that exchange, where he goes to Say, tells her, you're the target. Maybe you should play your idol.
No, not maybe. Not maybe. He says, play your idol.
So he's convincing her to flush the idol, which is great. Get that target off her back. Get that advantage out of the game that could create chaos. And with Say safe, they need to decide who we're going to vote out instead. And they could just vote out Mary still, which I think is a positive move for Cedric and for Say. This is someone who is very anti-Say, probably Say's biggest rival on the cast. But they get a bit short-sighted and they realize, oh, Kevin's gunning for me now. We should get Kevin instead. But like, if Mary had her vote, she would be gunning for Say as well. So my big issue is not the fact that Cedric leaked the information, but it's that they decided to target Kevin over Mary. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I don't think Cedric did this to flush the idol. I think that's giving Cedric some credit that I don't think he deserves based on confessional, right?
Oh, so this was just him saving Say.
In the confessional, he's saying, I want to work with Say because, we have a bond. She calls me dad, right? We have a relationship. We're close. He doesn't want to go after Say. That's what he prioritizes in the confessional. That's what makes the edit, right? Always got to be careful about that. He might have also said, and by doing this, I flush her idol, and then later I can go after her. But it essentially seems to be copying the Eva and Joe relationship without any of the actual conversation and buildup, right? He's declared single-handedly this new bond that they have that we haven't seen on screen. So that's part one, is I'm not convinced that he did it to flush the idol. Part two, about going after Kevin, it feels short-sighted from Pizza and Cedric's point of view. Because Pizza's the first one who kind of brings it up. For him, he's not close with Say. He was comfortable going after Say 5 minutes ago. He had a good bond with Kevin. I think you said kind of cannibalizing each other. This is a tribe where there's an episode of Community. One of the paintball episodes of Community is like a Wild West one where they keep having Mexican standoffs, right? And they're just constantly like pointing their paintball guns at each other. And that's what this feels like, is if anyone coughs too loud, they're getting voted off next. If your name was the last one said, you're the biggest target. And nobody is thinking long term. That's what I see.
And speaking of Pizza, we got to give him credit because for 2 weeks in a row, Pizza is positioned in the middle. It was Pizza and Kevin last week taking out Stephanie, and this week it's Pizza and Cedric voting out Kevin. So I feel like Pizza should be given a lot more credit in the edit, but I don't think he's really put on this pedestal at all. He's kind of faded into the background despite being potentially the best positioned player in the game, which is pretty crazy to think about.
We need to start saying credit in the edit more because that sounds great.
And I also don't understand why he would be willing to flip on Kevin here.
No.
Like, last week, it looked like the two of them were operating the middle. He was one of Kevin's closest allies. And for him, if you vote out Kevin, now you're down to 4. Mary is clearly the number 4 in that group because Cedric and Say will never flip on each other. So from Pizza's point of view, Mary has to go at 4 unless you want to force a rock draw. But I don't think Pizza is that close with Mary where he'd be willing to put his game on the line for her like that. He's essentially saying that we need to win some challenges because if that group boils down to 3, they take out Mary at 4, Pizza's the next to go when there's only 3 people left. So I question the decision a little bit from him. But do you want to go to Tribal Council, the therapy session?
Here's something I wrote down here. Where the other tribes have emotional connections, this tribe doesn't have a single iota of personality or character because it's so backstabby and unsuccessful. This whole tribal council is just them talking about, the survivor tropes of trust and relationships, and Say is really blatant about the core 4. It feels like a lot of survivor stereotypes egged into the meditation on failure by Jeff, right? That's my take, is that this is just a lot of, wow, you guys are terrible. Is anything going to fix this?
Cedric compares Jeff to their therapist, and Jeff says, quote, if I'm a therapist, then I'm doing a bad job. I think one of the big highlights from this tribal is the tension between Say and Mary, where they go at each other for like half the tribal council.
Most of it, yeah.
You brought up a Community comparison, and I'm not watching Community now, but I'm watching House of Dragon, so I can give you a House of Dragon comparison for this saga. So I'm in season 2. And in this part of the show, you have these 2 houses. It's House Bracken and House Blackwood. And the 2 of them have been on bad terms for centuries. They've been battling. They've been at war for a super long time to the point where no one even really remembers why they're feuding to begin with. And that's kind of how I feel with this Say and Mary feud, where during this tribal council, they're constantly going at each other, throwing these random insults back and forth, saying, you're playing an honest game. Oh, well, you're playing a deceptive and bad game. It's kind of confusing along the way. But we reach a certain point where I don't even remember why Mary and Say have it out for each other. I get that they were on opposing alliances last week, but it feels like this rivalry has extended beyond just like a strategic misunderstanding. It feels a little bit personal now.
So here's what this is, to my view. And thank you for having an esoteric, drawn-out reference to a old show. Not old show, that's a modern show.
Old show, I think season 2 came out in the last year. I'm a bit behind, but still.
You could have just said, like, they're like Montagues and Capulets, right, from Romeo and Juliet. Here's what this is. Somebody says, I think it's David, says that 3 years of friendship get compressed into 3 days on Survivor. 3 years of hatred. And imagine, okay, you kind of vibe with someone on day 1, and then you spend 3 years getting to know them slowly, right? You become pretty good friends. Happened to us in college. If you don't like someone, and then you have to spend 3 years with them, you hate them by the end. Probably. I wouldn't know. I've never hated anybody.
Okay.
That's not true. But
I feel like we have recordings of you on this podcast talking about how much you hate certain contestants.
That's a good point, but that's a different flavor, right?
Yeah, it's a different kind of hate.
Like imagine you're in prison and your cellmate and you don't get along and you're there for 3 years, right? Like you're going to fight a lot. That's what we're seeing here is 2 people who are trapped together in a failure of a tribe who have no other outlet but each other. And one vote was enough for the like targeting systems in their brains looking for an outlet to go, boop, you're my enemy, right? That's it. I don't think there's any specific slight, Mary misread a strategic move. That's it. She didn't do anything deliberate. And yeah, so that's that.
So can I get on to the vote?
Yeah, I did not get the count written down because I was watching on almost 2x speed and didn't have a chance to write down it went by so quick I couldn't get it down.
So this is a 3-1. 3 votes on Kevin, 1 on Say. The only vote against Say comes from Kevin. She plays her idol incorrectly here. She would have been better off holding on to it. So I think this is an instance of Cedric kind of outplaying Say, because if he wanted to, he could tell her, we have the numbers. I'm voting with you. There's no way Pizza Guy is going to try to force a rock draw here. You're set. Hold on to the idol. He didn't do that. He intentionally let Say flush the idol. So that's out of the game. It's going to get re-hidden next week. And in the next time on, we see Mary scurrying around the beach, searching for it.
Oh, yeah, we see her like run away from Say.
Yeah, and did you see Say chasing after her?
Yep.
Do you know who that reminds me of?
Someone from House of Dragons?
No, Rome yet again. Rome comes back to Survivor. He did the same thing to Saul last season.
He followed him around. That was really annoying.
Yeah. So a lot of parallels between these two. But Kevin goes out here. Were you sad to see Kevin go?
Of course. He's a Yule head. I do want to throw something out that I did catch in the vote. So last week I said on the pod, and it made it, to the gram and to TikTok, that Say hasn't established any like bonds. And when she goes home, her name's going to be misspelled because she hasn't told anyone how to spell her name. Time must be a flat circle and Say can walk across it because she heard our podcast, took notes. And when she voted out Kevin, she wrote his name down Kevan. She misspells his name, which it's exactly what I would hope she would do. I want every vote to be misspelled in this entire tribe. I think Kevin's vote for her was misspelled as well, actually. And that's exactly what this tribe is lacking, is any form of communication or bonding. But I just wanted to throw that out there. And yeah, I am sad to see Kevin go. He's a Yule head.
Not many Yule heads, or really any Yule heads left on the cast. I was sad to see him go, but this is something that I predicted last week. The fact that they didn't show the degree of his injury was kind of a sign that he wasn't going to have a deep run. And Alexis said in our group chat, she called me out because I made a video calling Kevin a pretender. And here we are. Want to go on to winners and losers?
Let's do it. Who's your loser?
Loser for the second week in a row is Star. She's the #1 target on the Loggy tribe. She failed to gain any alliances by sharing that Beware advantage. And even if she finds the advantage, I think the rest of the tribe is going to make her feel comfortable enough to not play it and vote her out anyway. So I feel the most confident in Star going home at the next opportunity, unless, someone goes in and saves her and tells her that she's in danger.
Star is also my loser, both for everything you just said, and even though Star's on my fantasy team, I signed Star to my team because she's an athlete. She's a saleswoman. She's a hustler, right? You know what she isn't? Able to sell herself as a former basketball player, to walk away from the strategy meeting and go, man, I wanted to compete after you just said, yeah, I'm fine not competing. You can't have it both ways. And that kind of attitude and lack of awareness does not bode well.
Yeah, I'm also a little bit upset, not upset, but just disappointed with Star from a character perspective. I thought she would be the craziest character on that Logi tribe, getting the majority of the screen time, but that's just not the case.
Her pre-show interview was so dynamic, right? And I loved her energy. She was fun. I don't think she's had fun once on this game yet. And I think, first impressions are everything, and her going out and idol hunting last week really set the tone. But who's your winner?
Winner, I'm giving it to Cedric. I think Cedric's in such a great spot moving forward, at least in the pre-merge. I don't see him going home anytime soon. Even if Mary finds the idol next week and she plays it, Say's going to be the player that takes the bullet for that alliance. So, barring any advantages messing up his game, Cedric's in a great spot. He solidified his core three with Pizza and Say, and he was able to flush the idol in the process. So, I think this was the best strategic move of the season so far from Cedric.
You're giving him a lot of credit that I was unwilling to give until we got to the vote. And I realized something. I didn't want to say that he flushed the idol, right? I thought he just wanted to help. But not telling Say that they had numbers and letting her still play it is a savvy move on his part that was underfeatured in the edit. And you picked up on it. And so I do think he deserves some more credit for that. He's not my winner, but it's more legitimate now than it was for me 10 minutes ago. My winner's Joe.
For breaking open that coconut?
No, for tearing 17 coconuts open with his bare hands. No, I loved two things about Joe's play this week. He's open enough with everyone on the tribe that Star knew wanted to come to him. Great sign of social game. The immediate instinctive read on his part to go to Shaheen and pull someone in from his alliance for transparency's sake. I don't love it really long term, right? It's not win equity good, but it's a great move. I think it's a high character move. I think it's a smart, concrete demonstration of loyalty, which is rare. So I really liked that move.
I'd give Joe a lot of credit for his social game, where if Star doesn't tell him about the advantage, then he's potentially at risk of losing his number one ally. So Joe seems like a guy that everybody gets along with. I don't think there's a single person on that Logi tribe now that is not aligned with Joe, other than maybe Bianca, but Bianca has had 2 confessionals this entire season, so we don't know anything about her.
Bianca's energy is she will do what Thomas says. That's the tone we've got so far. We've only seen her in conjunction with Thomas, right? It does feel a little weird giving the winner to anybody on Logi or Siva, because they are all winners because they are not on Vula. Do you have a dishonorable mention this week?
Yes, my dishonorable mention this week goes to CBS Sports. So during the immunity challenge, we get a quote from Jeff. So Joe takes the buoy and he launches it down the course. And Jeff yells out, "Joe throws that buoy like Tom Brady, 55-yard pass." Quick side note, Tom Brady is currently employed by CBS's rival, Fox Sports, where he's an announcer. This was an opportunity for Jeff to give CBS Sports some free publicity, but the issue there is that none of the commentators on CBS who are former quarterbacks are household names like Tom Brady. He could have compared him to people like Tony Romo, who some fans might know about. I think he dated Jessica Simpson in the mid to late 2000s, but this felt like a lost opportunity for CBS Sports, so they get the dishonorable mention.
And it's March, so who cares about football?
Oh, yeah, it's actually a very good point. This is the absolute lowest point in the entire year for NFL coverage. But
yeah. Wasn't the Super Bowl on CBS last year? I think it was, because Paramount advertised it a lot. And it feels like in a year where Paramount has the Super Bowl, they need to do more of this at the appropriate time, not in March. My honorable mention goes to Mitch, also for athletics. 5 for 5 from deep. I mean, that's some lights out shooting from Mitch, and it's not going to save him long term, but that was a really nice performance from him and deserves some credit. So just an old school in-game honorable mention for me.
Wow. Well, I appreciate it. I'm surprised we didn't get an analysis on the type of flies biting the Vula tribe, but I guess we'll need to wait on that till next week. That's really everything I got for this week. I'll say that the pre-merge of 48 has been solid. I don't think it's been as entertaining as the early game of 47, but I feel like we're planting the seeds for a stronger post-merge than maybe some of these other new era seasons. I'm really liking a lot of these contestants on the non-Vula tribe that will probably play a larger role in the game in the back half.
I'll say this. If Vula sends someone home next week, then we're really struggling in the pre-merge, but that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make for a stronger post-merge.
Great. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.